Hi everyone, welcome to episode 2 of The Aspiring STEM Geek. In this episode, I talk with my friend Damian Kozak, who has 6 years of experience in the robotics field. In this episode, we talk about his introduction to robotics at Northeastern University, his work with robots at Amazon, and a running challenge that we had in 2021. I hope that you enjoy our conversation. Episode 2 with Damian Kozak. Thank you for coming, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Memorial Day.
I like your stubble there. And
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I never knew that you wore glasses either.
Yeah, well, I wear contacts usually, but when I'm, at the end of the day or start of the day, I try to wear glasses as much as I can. Otherwise, your eyes get all funky, right?
Yeah.
At least my eye doctor does that. So.
I got contacts too. I'm so close to going for LASIK. I can't stand it.
Really?
Yeah. Well, contacts, it's just taking them out. I just want to limit the amount of things I need to do. And especially, when you're really tired, you get back, you just want to sleep and you're just laying in bed. And it's like, I have to take these out. There's so many people I know that have left in their eyes, and it just crushes their eyes. And back in the day, late nights, 2, 3 a.m., how many times I did that, and I wake up and my eyes are crushed and there's just eye boogers all over the place. Yeah, now I'm like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. bedtime. That's not the same issue, but anyway. Yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff I want to talk about. First off, I want to start off with your experience in college. So you went for mechanical engineering, or a mechie. Just want to know how you chose studying mechanical engineering.
Yeah, totally. It's a good question. Mostly, two big factors for me is my parents are both mechanical engineers, and important-ish people in my life were mechanical engineers. Even my sister at the time was a mechanical engineer or studying to be one. And math and sciences were always my top subjects in high school, particularly math. And so it just made the most sense. I maybe didn't have as much hands-on play engineering kind of work as a child, as much as I see other kids and even kids nowadays have. Some kids these days, they're building crazy stuff, right? They're with Arduino boards and they're coding and they're producing stuff at age 12. I didn't really yeah. I did a little bit less of that, but I didn't know that I liked technically minded, logical things that made sense. And so, yeah, and I knew mechanical engineering was also broad enough, and if I needed to change, I could change. So, overall happy, but those were kind of the major factors there.
Yeah, somebody hurled an insult at you recently where they said mechanical engineers are one step away from being undeclared. So it's somebody that's just over the past couple years just getting introduced to the engineering community. There's a lot of headbutting between majors.
There can be, yeah. But I always like to think, well, this is me as well, but industrial engineers, we always look down on for whatever reason.
All right.
I didn't, but some folks did.
Okay. Yeah. Just because now that we're on the topic of insults, there's a couple I like civil engineers basically just do algebra, which is kind of funny. Just imagine high schoolers designing bridges and all that stuff. Yeah. All right. And then just while you're in college, what are your favorite courses? And are there any courses that are relevant to what you do now? And you work with robotics, which is really cool.
Yeah, totally. Honestly, probably one of my favorites was one of my first classes. It was called General Engineering Capstone, 1001, something like that. And it was a first semester class. And the coolest thing we did was we built a semi-autonomous sumo robot. So sumo wrestling, there's a ring. It might be a 1.5 feet in diameter, with a white ring. 2 robots are placed in it. You press go, and then they just try to battle each other and push each other out. And I don't know, like my team like wasn't the strongest, although like we all got along together super well. But because of that, like kind of like we weren't like the best. I had to like step up and take like a big ownership stake, and like kind of do more work and like work outside hours and like the majority of the planning. And it just like turned out super well. We came up with a few like unique things. If I like thought back of that, I'd probably dig those up. But we ended up like winning the competition and doing really well and just like getting along really well. And yeah, that was great. And that was like, I was like, whoa, engineering's kind of cool. Although it wasn't like super technically challenging. Like there was literally, actually now that's kind of top of mind, the main factors that made our robot a little bit better than others was we weighed it down a ton with rolls of quarters or maybe like nickels or something. So I like went to the like Bank of America ATM or something and like exchanged some money for these rolls because they're like really compact and heavy. We also got like a really good sanded down like front for our robot, like a little ramp so that when we drove right at the other robot, we could lift it up and then they would lose traction and we could slowly push it out. I think those were like the two main things we did. And then we just had some like not super unique code, but like there were sensors on the ends of the robot that could detect black from white. The interior of the sumo ring was black, the exterior ring white, the boundary. And so like we just basically like charged right ahead. And if we ever hit the like either side or any of the sides of the ring, we just like turned towards the middle of the ring. And so like at the end of the day, it wasn't super complicated, but we were able to beat the other teams just because like they didn't think of those things and tried to go with like more unique strategies. And so like our strategic like direction and then, you know, just those like basic things I talked about was able to get it to work.
That's pretty cool. If you have any photos or videos, I can embed them into the podcast. So as we're talking,
Probably do, yeah.
Yeah, worth digging up. Let me know because it'd be cool to put in here. Yeah, it's man. For me personally, there are few and far between classes that really inspired me. So I'm glad that something for your college courses were actually inspiring. And that's funny too because it's a bit of foreshadowing to what you do now. But one of the last things I want to touch on while we're on your college career is Reiser, and this was a mechanical engineering co-op that you had. I'm just kind of curious what you learned there, what you took away, and how that shaped going into the workforce once you graduated.
Yeah, totally. So kind of like you're alluding to, not all my college classes were like that first one where it's like hands-on and fun and like I look back fondly on it, right? There were a lot that like you just kind of slog through, get the best grade you can. You don't really apply it much in real life. At least I never really have.
Well,
so there were a lot.
Just while you're talking about your GPA is insane, especially for an engineer, 3.92. I don't know many that were above 3.5. So that is impressive.
I don't even know where you dug that up. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like I just worked really hard to get really good grades. That's another story. But yeah, so like I had a lot of classes kind of like you were alluding to, which I'd love to hear what, you know, like those classes were for you, the long list of uninspiring ones and the short list of inspiring ones that you're like, whoa, this is awesome. Let's keep doing it. But Reiser kind of fell in that like big column of like, oh, this kind of stinks. Like I was doing a lot of hands-on, just like building mechanical assemblies. Reiser is a company that produces like cutting and food processing components and equipment. So like if you need to like slice, dice, cut, shape, form, a lot of foods you do mechanical, like you apply some kind of like mechanical force to produce what you want to come out as. And Reiser did a lot of that. And so I was building a lot. I was like doing a little bit of like redesign work with like CAD. I was like helping customers do like tests, stuff like that. And like I kind of realized like it definitely wasn't like I wasn't doing intense design work. This is definitely like very much surface level stuff out of the co-op. This was my second co-op, so I must have been like 19 or 20 years old. But I kind of realized that like what these engineers do, which is like sit behind a computer all day, like make a few changes to CAD, like I didn't really love that much. And so in a sense, the co-ops were great for me because they showed me all the things I didn't want to do. And I was like, if I had to come back to Reiser, no offense, but like I wouldn't really enjoy my job. Like I could see those guys, like they came in, they kind of didn't really enjoy the work. Like they took the mandatory 15-minute breaks because they just needed to like get away for 15 minutes as much as they could, which that's like the only place I've ever seen that happen. One guy would walk around and he would like do this like braking motion as if he's like snapping something in half and be like break time. And everyone just like file outside and they just like smoke cigarettes outside. So like there were pros and cons. Like some of the guys were cool, but and like a joy to be around, but a majority were just like kind of dragging their feet in. Yeah, didn't love it. So
yeah, I mean that's how it is a lot of times with a lot of different work is just a paycheck, and that's cool. But I mean I realized the same thing on the finance side. I'm personally annoyed at myself that it took me 3 years to figure out. It's like, hey, I don't enjoy this. I want to stop doing this 80-hour work week. And it's, or 60, 80 hour. And it's after initially it can be exciting, but quickly falls off.
You're not enjoying it. It's just not something I'm ever going to dedicate how many hours a week to. Like you got to get that stuff out of your life, right? So.
Yeah, no, it's a good life lesson. And usually when you're younger, especially if you're very motivated, and that it's harder to figure out, especially for myself. It's like, oh, I could do 60, 70, 80 hours a week and I'll be good. And then looking back, it's like, yeah, no, I like my 40-hour work week now and taking vacation time. My first year working, I didn't take any vacation. And looking back, it's like, not a great idea.
Yeah. Wow. Why do you cap nowadays at 40, or just flexibility there, or do you really try to keep that life work on?
40, there will be times I go over because I do enjoy the work. I do enjoy just coding and messing around with machine learning models. But there's also work-life balance, which I think it depends on your situation. I think if you're creating your own business, then it's a different situation where 60, 70, 80 hours a week that's really necessary. But 40 hours a week, you have contract with your employer. A lot of people have the 40-hour work week. If for whatever reason you couldn't do your work in that time and it could be on you, sure, I'll bang out a few more hours, but for the most part, I have to, just balance it out at this point. Not a business owner yet. We'll see.
Is that a life dream or career dream, is to start your own business?
Yeah, it is. The problem is I want to start a business. The problem is I don't know what I want to start. It's one of those problems, and that can have its own issues as well, where if you're just trying to create a business for the sake of creating a business, a lot of times that doesn't work out well. Usually, especially now that I'm looking more in the tech space, you kind of need a product already, and then the business can come along. If you don't have a useful product or service, then trying to just fill that hole is not the best idea. And it's really tough because you're competing with a lot of people, especially what I'm looking at, machine learning. There's a variety of things that you could do. You could try to create your own models. How much, if any, do you mess with ChatGPT?
A lot these days.
Okay, nice. What personal side?
Personal and work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, it's all. Especially, I don't know if you do any programming or software engineering on your. No, not well. I mean, you might touch it because you're kind of managerial now, so probably less so. But I'm 80-90% of my work is coding, so lots of time on keyboard, lots of technical stuff, building up to being a SME, I'm blanking on the term now, but it subject matter expert. That's what it is. And it's useful for when I program. I mostly program Python. I assume at some point, either in college or in work, you've run into Python. But it's one of the dominant languages in machine learning. But you can always get better. It's really fun to prompt it and figure out how to get a really good answer and try to make your code even better. But if you're also learning a new language, I'm trying to mess around with Rust or Go, which are new to me, or learning about something called Kubernetes, which is overseeing microservices. I found ChatGPT to be really helpful, and it's not the end all. There's still Google, there's still Stack Overflow. But I'm curious what you do on the personal side. Is it more for your running stuff or?
Yeah, I would say a lot of it's like the running stuff. ChatGPT for me, like when I have questions about running, is good for like scratching the surface, but it certainly like is not the only resource I'll check, just because I've seen a lot of errors, and I know like what ChatGPT pulls from, which is like which like
everything
off the Google sphere of information. I've been through a lot of it, and a lot of it is like not that great. When I do these like more these like deeper looks into like scientific reviews or just like ideas out there that are new, or really like anything, and trying to run faster essentially. And I've been through it enough that I know ChatGPT isn't getting the best information, because I sift through so much of that and I throw out like, I don't know, 80%, right? But ChatGPT kind of like directs me like, oh, ChatGPT thinks it's these 5 factors that influence this space. Let me do some like further digging into those 5 factors. At least it's like led me to a few things to look at.
Yeah, no, it's an additional Google search for me. It's definitely, like you said, not the end all, but pretty good source. And I'll definitely circle back to the running stuff, because the running stuff is wild with you, but I kind of want to touch on the robotics side of stuff. So you work for Amazon Robotics. I looked into the history of Amazon Robotics. It really started off when they purchased a company named Kiva Systems back in 2012, which is 12 years ago, which is wild, which eventually turned into Amazon Robotics. Some of the cool stuff that they have: back in 2017, they released a robot called Hercules, capable of lifting and moving 1,250 pounds. Then there's a variety of different ones that they've created. Pegasus for sorting and moving individual package, Proteus, which is a fully autonomous robot, Titan for moving large and heavy items. And I know you have experience working with Robin and RWC4 robots. What was it like to first see them on the warehouse floor?
Yeah, sure. And I can actually give some more color into the whole Kiva Amazon Robotics thing as well, just because I've similarly asked a lot of questions in the space. So you're right, it was called Kiva back in 2012 when Amazon purchased it. That's when it became Amazon Robotics. When it was Kiva 2012 and before, it was servicing mainly Amazon and Walmart actually, and it was providing them with these semi-autonomous, really not autonomous at all, but at the time I think they called them semi-autonomous, orange Kiva drives, which is just like they're these hemispherical robots that would pick up storage shelves called pods, and they would bring those to associates, Amazon or Walmart, and they pick and store out of those shelves. And so this saved those Amazon associates and Walmart associates from having to walk like 20 miles a day, because instead of having to walk through all that inventory and picking it to be able to like ship it to customers, the robots would bring the inventory to them. And so we're basically like automating the simple task of walking, and we're not yet automating, because this is very difficult to do, the much more dexterous, complex task of like picking items and putting them into tight spaces and picking the right item. Amazon Robotics is still working on that, believe it or not. It's been in the works for the past like 2-3 years, and it's not where it needs to be like deployed in the field. And those, just to back up a bit, those robots would basically drive along a grid system. So there were just like barcodes, literally like 1 inch by 1 inch, and there's a little camera on the bottom of through the robot, shoot through the bottom. And then I would just like know exactly where it was on this grid. And there was obviously like some really cool software to like tell the drives what to get and where to go and all that stuff, right? Because otherwise it's going to be traffic jams of these robots running around the floor. But that's like Amazon core business. And then since then, you're right, since that 2012 purchase, I think those Walmart contracts eventually like fizzled out the next few years, and then right only started servicing Amazon. And they developed these new drives. I forget which one it's called, maybe Hercules, but that's the one that has a conveyor belt on top. Robin places, okay, I'll jump to the Robin part and kind of integrate it in. Robin is a robotic work cell. One of my really good friends, Ted, used to literally, he was an intern before me, like a year or two before me. He also Northeastern mechanical engineer. He's brilliant. He was like the co-op, like researching if Robin was like the possibility before like Amazon Robotics deployed literally over 1,000 of these robotic work cells. And each of these robotic work cells is like $500,000 if I had to guess. So it's crazy that like a good friend of mine just like did that back in the day. Take it like kind of a year past when he was like messing around, just like trying to get a drive, one of those Amazon Robotics like robots that drives on the floor. The drive past the robot arm, and the robot arm like places a package on it. That's what he was doing. Take it forward a year, and there were like maybe 2 or 3 test cells, mostly in North Reading in Massachusetts, so just north of Boston, 30 minutes, 45 minutes with bad traffic. And maybe like 1 or 2 at like some random Amazon fulfillment center in like Houston or something like that. Or maybe Denver, actually. I think I flew to Denver once with them. And I was just like a mechanical engineering co-op, and when things broke or we needed to like put something out in the field quickly with like 80/20 or like put some sensors in there, some new cognitive barcode scanners, and make sure they're like scanning correctly, so that when we pick up the package, we scan the barcode on it so we identify it. Those sorts of things. They would just like ask me to do it. If it was something more intense, they would ask like a 10-year mechanical engineer to design it on CAD. But that was really cool. The Robin team was probably like 50, maybe 40-ish engineers at the time. We did like a daily stand-up every day, and it was very much like go, go, go. Like here's everyone like gave an update in this like daily stand-up, and then if there are any blockers for anybody, then like people would help them. And like the timelines were insane, and we needed to make like so much progress with so little time. It was really like fun environment, and people I worked with there were like super awesome. And that was kind of my experience driving up to North Reading every day with 2 or 3 friends. We all co-opted from Northeastern together. Drove back, so like that community was great, and then just like the coworkers and the technologically challenging space we were in was like, wow, these 3 things are super awesome. So I loved it ever since then.
It's an awesome experience, and that's even better to be able to do it with friends. And I never really had that experience where I was able to work with a friend group, but like even after hours, I'm sure it's not like you got back and you're like, oh, how do we solve these problems? But it's being together and kind of thinking on things that's pretty cool. Yeah. All right. And then which one of those robots impressed you the most throughout your career? Which one have you seen and you're like, that's awesome. I can't believe that it can do that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, at face value, like the drives, Robin, well, the drives and like RWC4, which is, we can talk about that in depth if you want to. That's an acronym for Robotic Work Cell 4. It's just a toe palletizer, so just palletizes the toes instead of associates having to do that. Really like manually challenging, demanding job. We can jump into like that technically if we want those, but I view those 2 as like fairly simple just because they're literally just like logic based. They're like inputs and outputs. I guess the drives themselves, the software that is integrated into them, like telling them where to go, when to go, that's probably much more complicated. Like optimizing that is probably millions of dollars of savings and has to be spot on. Otherwise it's not going to work. But then I think the newer technology, like the Proteus, like fully autonomous, like I've been in and around these, and you can literally just like walk right past it, and it like senses you and it slows down. And then you can like crowd it with like a group of people, and it'll like very slowly like maneuver its way through the crowd, like very impressively, very safe. I think that's probably been like the coolest thing I've seen so far.
Nice.
But honestly, some of them are just like inputs and outputs. Like if this goes and these conditions are set, just like do this. I'm like, not super complicated, but if it works, then it saves a lot of time and money. That's great.
Yeah, I don't know how recent Proteus is, but one of the videos I watched is they had some sort of technician on the floor, and I think she had some sort of vest with sensors on it. Do you still have to wear that around it?
I think they got rid of that, but they used to wear those vests as like it would give off like an RFID or signal or something similar, and it would like disable drives in that area so they could safely work and like not be at any risk. That's just like one of the safety devices. But for Proteus, I've walked like right up past it, so I'm pretty sure that that's been fine. That was probably like maybe 6 months to a year ago when I last walked past them.
That's pretty cool. All right. And I guess you kind of answered this because I was going to ask, have you done anything on the I'm sure at some point you've probably done a little bit of software or seen into it. Is there anything of interest in particular of there, or meet any people that is like, oh, that's pretty cool that you're working on this problem?
Good question. We do always have software issues. Like getting accurate data is always a big challenge for us, which is kind of surprising given the space we're in and given like Amazon's focus on data, but has always been challenging. So we always have like one-off data issues where the software team needs to get involved to figure out like where the data pipeline is down. I don't know if you consider that software, but in my brain it is.
I think so too, yeah.
And then not like a crazy amount more. Most of like the software that's integrated into these robotic work cells or like machines that I work on or have worked on the past 4-ish years, it mostly just like gets data from AWS. It mostly just like sends an ASIN ID. So an ASIN is just like an Amazon product. You can pick and order like a pen or a notebook or a watch or anything. They all have like a string of an identifying number. And so like whenever we scan one, or we scan like a tote for like that tote stack or robot arm, or we scan like the barcode of a package that we're going to ship, but we have to sort it first with like Robin. We just like send that information to the cloud, and when we receive back like package here, or like, okay, we have that information now, we know what kind of label to apply to the package, or like we pass that information along to the drive, which now knows which like zip code we're sorting it to in the final destination, and then it'll like basically just like push it off into that correct chute that goes into a box that goes to the zip code. So honestly, I see it as just like an information get information kind of thing, like not super complicated.
Yeah, it's interesting on the data side. I'm trying to remember where I heard this, but I'm sure you know Tesla, it's just a driving computer. They collect all the data from it, and then they retrain their autonomous system off of that. And for stops and turns, a lot of the times they throw out the data because there's a lot of times that people kind of just slide through a stop, and they might brake a little bit, but they're not fully stopping. And to be compliant with the law, especially if you're trying to build an autonomous system, you have to exactly stop. So that's an example of an issue with data where it's like, oh, you're collecting millions and, well, even more than that, billions and trillions of data points. It's like, we have to throw all these out because Jerry keeps on sliding through the stop sign and just kind of puts a little bit on the brake, but he's still driving and just causes issues. Funny. Yeah, throwing out data is a real thing. So you talked about Proteus and how you kind of interacted with that. What are the other interactions like with some of the arms, like Robin or any of those?
What do you mean interactions?
Just what if you have a machine that's sorting it? I think it might be Sparrow that does the suction. Does a human ever have to interact with it? Is it just kind of on its own until it needs maintenance or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. With pretty much all automation paths, automation products, whatever you want to call it, or robotics, there's going to be like two main exceptions. Well, I guess three main ones that require like human input. First one is going to be like exception handling. So like when, or for whatever reason, we don't want to sort that package, or we had an issue sorting it, and like we recognize it was damaged or something. Like some of those cameras are checking for that sort of thing, or maybe the barcode like can't be read. Maybe it's like mangled, or like it never got a barcode, something like that. This is specifically for Robin, which is picking up packages, placing it on drives, and then the drive goes and sorts it. That final zip code destination, like I was describing earlier, but like exception handling, it might just like put that package to the side, or it might put it on the drive, and the drive will go somewhere and then like dump it to another chute. And those kinds of scenarios, we have to like problem solve. Like there's a problem and we have to solve that problem. That's the verbiage Amazon uses. And so there's always going to be like exceptions that need to get like sidelined, and we're probably never going to get away from that. We do like the main thing that I focus and my team focuses on is like reducing those exceptions. We call it like bad packages, or like it's our quality metric. So like whenever we have a good scan, or like a good pick, or a good process path, it's great. Whenever it's a bad one, that's bad. And then we develop this metric from it: good count divided by quantity, good count with bad count. So they're like exceptions, right? You mentioned the second one, which is preventative maintenance, and any kind of maintenance. Like these things break all the time. It's like another space that my team focuses on is availability, which is, are these machines available to be used? Like if you want to drive to the grocery store and your machine in your car is broken, it's not available to be used, you can't use it, right? These machines don't make us money unless they're producing packages. They need to be available. They need to be knocked down, defaulted, or like there's a bunch of different verbiage there to be used. And so that's like another huge one. And so we're probably never going to get away from some sort of preventative maintenance. Maybe in the future, we're going to call it like predictive maintenance, or like there's like more like different ways to like do this kind of maintenance. It doesn't always have to be like a set schedule. And then just like ad hoc maintenance as well. Preventative is hopefully, do the maintenance before it breaks. Like reactive maintenance is like, it's broken, let's go fix it right now. And so we do hire a lot of technician, and we spend a lot on technician labor hours, and parts are always really expensive. But at the end of the day, like if we're processing, we have like 10 machines, and we're processing packages with these 10 machines, and then 2 suddenly go down, it's going to mess up like the flow of the entire building. And it's not just this localized small event. It could really like impact a lot of different places.
Yeah. It is really cool how advanced things have gotten. Just thinking on the 2000s, I guess there's some automation in automotive industry, but in terms of just warehouses and moving things around, I'm sure if we went back 25, 30 years, it's just a bunch of brawny dudes for the most part just lifting boxes and moving it. And now you have all these wild machines that do everything. And yeah, technology is awesome. I know people are scared of AI or social media killing you, but overall, it's just net positive, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's got to be. You'd be surprised, though. There's around 100, 110 like Amazon robotic, like sortable fulfillment centers where my team and I operate in. And I think we only automate like 80% of like packaging products. Or no, sorry, we only automate 20%. So 80% is still like manually packaged. There's a lot of reasons for that, but it's not quite as high as you would think. Amazon is starting to deploy these like what they're calling highly automated fulfillment centers, but we're still very far away from being like 100% fully automated, or like even like 80, 90%. Like, yeah, it's still really challenging.
Yeah, I could see just on the finance economic side, just cost of capital, meaning the cost of the robots and building them and training them on the software side versus the cost of paying a person to do it, and then just the economies of scale. It makes sense. All right, let's move off of Amazon Robotics and move into something I know you're crazily passionate about, which is running. So the first thing I want to start off with, these past couple of years, you've been training for marathons. One of the last marathons you ran was in 2 hours and 54 minutes. And a marathon is 26.2 miles or 42.2 kilometers, meaning you ran at a pace of 6 minutes and 40 seconds per mile or 4 minutes and 8 seconds per kilometer. How did you get into marathon running?
Yeah, totally. I played club soccer and ski racing, but it was mainly the soccer that made me want, this was during college, made me want to run in the summers more. It's probably not the best way to stay in shape for soccer. There's a lot of inherent differences between like the stop and go of soccer, fast twitch muscle fibers versus like slow twitch muscle fibers and marathon running and running at that exact same speed, which is not like super fast, but it's decently fast maybe. But it is what I decided to do at the time. And I did more and more running with friends and I enjoyed it. I don't know. It was just like nice to like get away and like decompress. And I don't know, some runs were great and some were like not so great. And like that continues to this day. I think more and more are generally becoming better and better. But yeah, I just like slowly started doing it more and more through like half marathons in summers to stay in shape for soccer. And then my junior year, a lot of kids that I knew were trying to run Boston Marathon for charities. I also applied, didn't get in, yada, yada, yada. A few years later, I had a few friends, like close friends of mine that had run Boston Marathon. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And a few of them, they're like people I looked up to. They're like older and just like really great people. And then eventually I did sign up for my first marathon. I got a bunch of friends to commit to Martha's Vineyard Marathon 2020 with me in May. And it got canceled because of COVID. And I was like, I'm training anyway. I might as well just like run a marathon on my own. So I ran my first solo marathon alone, basically unsupported, except I think my parents showed up with bikes about like halfway through and like kind of like bikes beside me the last like 13-ish. But it was definitely a lot of pain and it sucked and it was not fun. And I walked a lot of the latter miles. I didn't even drink water until I was like 13 miles in just because I didn't know anything. And it was a pretty hot day. But yeah, I slowly just started running more and more. My friends got into it. And it's just like, it's to this day remained a great way for me to like push myself, connect with people, and just like see what I can accomplish like physically and mentally. And it's one of those things where like, no matter how much time or no matter how much time and effort you put into it, like you can always improve. And those sorts of things are great because you keep doing that forever, basically.
Yeah. Then, okay, so that was, I didn't know, I assumed that you had even started before then, but then 2021, I challenged you, still COVID, and to see which one of us could run the most. I think June to July within the month. I looked up my stats. I ran about 221 miles, and that means that's like 7.25 miles a day. And I know you beat me by 10 or 15 miles. And I thought that was, just looking back at those numbers, because I'm going the opposite way of you right now. I'm bulking. I'm not running that much unless I'm sprinting. But since you're doing all this training for marathons, you told me you're running 60 plus miles a week, right? How's that going? And then you're also thinking about ultra marathons, right? And what is an ultra marathon?
Yeah, totally. A lot of things to touch on there. That challenge against you was really fun and interesting. It's important to note that we only shared how much we had run at the end of the week. It wasn't like we could see how much each other was running, just like do one more, you know what I mean? It was sort of like, you kind of need you kind of need a healthy buffer if you expect to win. And I think early on I had a little bit more than you. And then you had like a great like middle latter half. And then at the end, like the last week I managed to like just eke out over you. But that last week I was so nervous and I was like, I really don't want to lose. It's the worst because like you're just forcing yourself to run like when you don't want to run. I literally remember that last day before like we texted before like midnight or 10 p.m. or whatever. I was literally like running like 16 miles in the dark in like my hometown. And like I'm like dodging from one side of the street to the other because like the car's coming and they can't see me. I'm wearing all black, you know. But that was like fun and interesting and like I would love to do that again. It was actually kind of fun looking back on it.
Yeah, I have to get back in running shape. We could do it. You could probably easily beat me at any sprint. I could sprint, but I assume like all the soccer and everything that you've done, you can easily out sprint me. But yeah, no, I'm still, man. To think that you're doing 60 plus now, that's just so. Something we talked about this. What do you do when you do those runs? Like, I used to love running through the city because I could see, and I wouldn't do more than 5-6 miles usually. But the cool thing about running through a city, you get to see a lot of different things. Running through the suburbs is probably my least favorite. But running through more rural areas, if there's mountains or ocean, it's really cool because that could be calm and relaxing, and you get to kind of take in nature. So what kind of environment are you running in? Music versus podcasts? I mean, we talked about this, but it's got to be podcasts, right?
That's a good question. One of the reasons why I love running, especially like currently in the past few years, I've been traveling a ton, both personally and for work. It's honestly my favorite way of like exploring new areas, seeing a new city, or doesn't have to be a city, a new place. Like people go on like sightseeing tours and all that, but like, I don't know, like when I'm in a European city and I like wake up at 6 or 7 a.m. before everyone's at those like crazy monuments, I just like run through it. I stop and like, I'm in awe, I take a picture or two. That's like kind of all I need. I get to just like do eight-ish miles of that and be like, wow, what a great morning. Let's go get some espresso coffee, you know? I love exploring new places, like no matter where I am, but generally cities more so just because of personal work travel. Or I guess work travel, like living in Boston and like visiting friends in major cities, or a lot of them still live in major cities. So I am doing a lot of city running. Not my favorite. I really hate stopping. So whenever I hit a light, I turn right or I double back, or like I try to cross the street to camp.
That's the right move. I could never understand why people stop. For me, it's red light. Okay, I'm either left or right, and and sure, I might kind of do a square or rectangle around, but why would I stop running? So I totally agree with your method.
Yeah, so I'm trying to never stop, but city running, that kind of happens, but honestly, my favorite for like cities, and Boston's a great example of this, but like Chicago, New York, like a lot of major cities have like some water by it. I love running along the river, like one way, the other side, something like that. A lot of that, but like honestly, whenever I'm like even on vacation, even when I went to like Alaska with my dad like 2 years ago, like I was running like on highways. Literally, it's like me and like 3 18-wheelers over the course of like an hour. It was like,
was it summer Alaska or winter Alaska?
It was winter, and it was like 2 hours from Juneau, so just like literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But just get it done. I do listen to podcasts, some like audiobooks, but I don't like I prefer reading. Honestly, and I still do a good chunk of reading these days, especially like flying and that sort of thing. Music a little bit. I actually like try to use music as a tool. There's definitely moments where like a song hits, or like a specific 30 seconds of a song, and I'm like doing a sprint interval, and I'm like, I can tell I start running a lot faster. Sometimes I like start waving my hands and start like kind of moving a little bit.
I get it. I've been there. I can see you. Yeah. Is one of your songs "Peanut Butter Jelly" by Galantis?
Yeah, that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Especially if like you have good memories about it, right? It's like the intro of the song. You're like, oh my god, it's great. Yeah. I can't remember. I remember this time. Was awesome.
Violence come. Yeah, no, I totally get it. All right. Yeah. Well, I do kind of. So I know you're doing marathons now, ultramarathons. What are they?
Sure. I think an ultra by definition is anything over 50K, which is like 34 miles. So, or maybe 33 and change. Technically, I think I've run an ultra early. So I did 35 miles in one day during COVID. I was really hoping to hit 50 because I had just finished reading Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, and I don't want to spoil the book, but he does something a lot more impressive than 50 miles in a day. But I also like didn't really train for it. So like, it was really hot in the summer, and I was also alone. this is also like a suburb run, which, like you were saying, not the best, like quiet streets, not much to look at, just trees and houses.
Yeah.
But that's like that's an ultra 50K or more. These days, ultras I think are becoming more and more common. Specifically in the ultra space, I think we might have talked about this last, but I think the event or the style of event that interests me the most in the ultra world right now is something called like a backyard ultramarathon, I guess, or just a backyard ultra. And it's typically like around a 4-ish mile loop. There's typically like some elevation change. It's usually through the woods or like some kind of trail. It's literally usually in someone's backyard. Like someone just has like a cool house in Texas or like Vermont or New Hampshire. I feel like those are the places I've heard of the most or Maine. So, and you basically just like run that 4-mile loop in an hour or under an hour, and then you get the rest of the hour to like rest and recover and just like hang out. And this really interests me because you're like around people the whole time. You're literally like starting together as a group, and then you'll probably be running side by side with a lot of folks. But also like your support crew, you get to see them every hour at least. And that's great. I love that like camaraderie. That is a little different than the classic ultra, which is like you alone on a 100-mile track, and you probably don't see someone for like hours at a time, which is crazy. But like some people enjoy that side of it. This like backyard ultra is like a little more social, maybe. I would love to do one of those eventually, and like definitely. What's cool is like you don't really have to run that fast, but it is just like mentally how far can you push yourself? Like, of course, everyone hates themselves after like 25, 30, 40, 50, plus miles. And it's just about can the person next to you like push themselves mentally further than you can? They're not necessarily more fit than you, but like can they take it a little bit more than you? And that idea is like, whoa, like I would love to be in that situation. So eventually I'm going to do one. There actually potentially maybe we'll do one either this November or in May. I actually have a really good friend of mine who's an insane ultra runner. Aaron Kabbalah just ran the LA to Vegas 300-mile race called the Speed Project alone, and he broke the course record. And
300 miles.
300 miles alone, yeah.
Damn.
And he's like gone like second at like 240-mile races, the Moab race, and he's even like won a few like 100-mile races. Like he's insane, but he's going to be putting on as a race director a backyard ultra in Texas. So they're doing like a trial in November and then an official one in like May, I believe. So I'm really hoping to do one of those too.
Texas in May. Texas is big enough where it can vary, but it's kind of hot everywhere. I mean, I remember Austin in August and it's 100 plus, and I was only doing a mile or two on the track, and man, it was brutal.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. It's just outside Austin, I think. Or no. Yeah, it is just outside Austin, their location. Okay. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, another thing you did is you said, oh, here's a truncated paper. And in actuality, it's 31 pages that you sent to me about trying to get down to a 2 hour and 45-minute marathon. And you talked about some factors, the most important factors that affect your running ability. You mentioned VO2 max and the lactic buildup when you run. I want to know if you could talk more about which one of those you can actually improve. You mentioned in your little write-up, some of them are genetic. What can you work on to really build yourself up as a runner?
Yeah, totally. So like, this is a crazy concept, and it's taken me a long time to like understand and come to agree with it. But there are like crazy genetic things that are way less trainable, and others that are completely trainable, like entirely genetic, and like not necessarily genetic, but thing outside of your direct control is like max heart rate. Max heart rate is genetic, and it's typically tied closely to your age. So like the younger you are, the higher your max heart rate. The older you are, the lower your max heart rate. Doesn't matter how trained you are. People that are like extreme athletes at the age of 33 and people that have been on the couch since age 30 or up to age 33 have the same max heart rate in theory. And so you looked at like the general populations, maybe not those two individuals, but large populations, that would be true. But probably the most trainable single factor, if I could have like a magic pill, which like obviously this like kind of would go against the whole point of like push yourself mentally and physically, and like the journey being so important than the end result. But if you could have a magic pill that would change one thing, that I would take to like, for me and for most people, I think this is the answer, would be increasing your lactate threshold, which is the effort you can put forward right before your lactic acid builds up like exponentially in your blood and your cells, and it basically prevents you from like running, like holding that speed or holding that effort level. And so to back up a little bit further, it's kind of like give at least my like condensed understanding of what like kind of the main like factors in like the endurance fitness space. And these are probably fairly specific to marathon running, but they probably apply broadly to a lot of things, not just marathon running. The VO2 max, I like to view it as like sort of like this sets your potential, like your upper threshold. So like if your VO2 max is like 60, I think I bet mine would be like around 60. It sort of sets like your upper threshold. Like it might be good enough. Like if you have VO2 max of 60, that's kind of like all you need probably for like a 2 hour, 40 minute, 2 hour, 30 minute marathon, which is crazy. But that's like kind of your upper level. And then your lactate threshold really tells you like how close to that VO2 max you can be. So if your lactate threshold is super high, it's really close to that VO2 max. But if it's super low, it's down here. And it's really your like performance is determined by your lactate threshold. In simple terms, your lactate threshold is your 30 to 60 minute max effort. At that max effort, 30 to 60 minutes, 30 minutes is more for like untrained individuals. 60 minutes would be like more like the most elite athletes of all time, specifically endurance athletes probably. That would be at their lactate threshold, would be their 60-minute max performance. If I could guess, I would guess I'm at like high 30s, low 40s, somewhere in that space. But I have no idea. That's just like kind of what I have in my brain. I'm going to back up for a half second.
Yeah, go.
So if your VO2 max increases, which is like this 40, 30 to 60-minute max effort, then everything's going to increase in the endurance world and probably like all your athletic accomplishments or endeavors. So that's a small part of it. There's a lot of other factors, but if I could influence one, and the one I care about the most today is certainly my lactate threshold.
Okay, interesting. And the last thing I want to talk about with running, you already mentioned Goggins. Talk about the 4x4x48 challenge. When did you do it? What is it? And why?
Yeah. I actually did this during our month challenge in June of 2020. Was it June 2020?
Yeah, it was June.
I think so.
2021, I think.
Oh, 21. Okay, that sounds about right. I did it in like the second week of that challenge, or second week of that month. This is another silly idea. I kind of like equated or tie it very closely to this backyard ultra thing, which is the 4x4x48 challenge. You have to run 4 miles every 4 hours, and you do this for 48 hours straight. So you basically do it 12 times in total. Yeah, 12 times. That makes sense. Or no, 12 by 4 is 48 hours. Yeah, that's right. And so you basically have to like run through the night twice, and you only get like 3.5 hours of sleep depending on how fast you run. That's really generous because typically you're gonna like want to shower and decompress after, and like you can't go immediately to sleep after running. But it's just one of those things that just like sucks to do, and every once in a while it's just like good to like push yourself outside that comfort zone and like do something that you really don't want to do, but like you can do it anyway. And actually to this day, I still like during some runs, I have like a few miles left. I'm like, it's only 4 miles. Like you can run 4 miles at any point in time. And that's what that was a big takeaway from that challenge, just because like you have to wake up at literally midnight and run 4 miles. Then again at 4 a.m. and run 4 miles. And there's nothing that you want to do less than to do that. But if you do it, then at least you can do it if you ever need to. And so to this day, like 4 miles left in a marathon, I'm like, that's only 4 more miles. Like I've done worse. I've done that 12 times in a row. It sucked, but I could do it at least.
Yeah, no, the running challenge was enough for me. Sleep deprivation on top of that. I get it, but I'm good for now. Maybe I'll get an itch to do it. I'll let you know if I do.
Yeah, I think you'd like it. I think it would suck, but you complete it and you'd look fondly back on it.
Yeah, I do like things that suck, so that is true. but
Me too. Type 2 fun.
yeah, it's fun. Like you said, it's challenging yourself. It's kind of seeing on Strava or something else, or kind of for me at this point, just weightlifting accomplishments is like, yeah, I lifted this heavy piece of metal once or twice or three times and increased my reps. It's arbitrary, but for whatever, we're humans, we like competition. Especially, I think we both personally like self competition. It's kind of that's how I've seen a lot of things, that you need to compare yourself relatively in some things, but for me, exercise or if it's an individual sport, it's really comparing it to yourself, which I like, because I can control myself. I can't control teammates or the opponent. So it's a good test of things.
Yeah, I think most people should always mostly compare themselves to themselves, and like, whatever, like everyone starts small, everyone like starts not that great, but as long as like you can improve like from where you were last month, and like whatever you're doing is working, and keep at it.
Yep, definitely agree with that. All right, one thing I'm starting to do that you've already done with a few of our friends is I'm getting ready to get scuba certified. You got scuba certified in Ecuador?
Honduras, actually. Yeah.
Honduras. Okay. How was that?
It was so cool. I had actually done like I don't know, maybe like 20-minute like scuba experience when I was in Spain and Mallorca, like maybe a summer ago. And like we didn't have to get certified for it. We were just like basically tied to the instructor the whole time. I kind of like expected to love scuba diving. I really like snorkeling. I like ocean sports. And I have a lot of friends that have been scuba diving for a long time. And so I was kind of already enamored with the idea of doing it before. But after getting certified, just like basically liked it even more. I just booked a trip with my parents to Bonaire. That's in the Caribbean. I hope to do some scuba diving there in November. But it's the coolest. I know a lot of people get like scared or nervous. It's another like self-control thing and like self-discipline. It's kind of like tied to all these other things we're talking about of like set your mind to it and like try to go for it. So obviously you're gonna be like uncomfortable at times. You're gonna like freak out a little bit, but like, just try to improve, like figure out different like strategies, get people that are really good at it to like be with you and show you and all that sort of stuff. And there's like a lot of skill development there as well, which is cool. It is like a little technically challenging. You need to know like there's like dive computers and dive watches that you need to like be familiar with and know how to use to be able to like scuba safely. And it's just like so calm and peaceful down there. I honestly couldn't recommend it enough to people.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do it, going to Thailand sometime in the coming months. So that would be really cool to be able to scuba dive there.
Okay, yeah. Are you good in the water?
Yeah, like I can swim. From what I've heard from other, like I talked to Evan Kloss, and he got scuba certified somewhere too, and he said he's not a strong swimmer. And I've heard a lot of people say that it's actually easier than swimming. And I have my swim test in a week or two, which I'm good enough. I did try to do swimming as an exercise during COVID, and it's just one of the issues is just access to the pool at that time. But when I did go to the gym, I just remember trying to swim, and we were doing a lot of running then. So I thought my endurance would be amazing, but I would do 6-7 laps and then have to hang on to the ledge and breathe. And there's an older guy right next to me, and he easily did 50 without stopping. And I just, that's insane. It's a great exercise. I would do it more. It's just access to pool, and that's the biggest issue. But I do like it, and it did kick my butt pretty good. And now since we're getting towards the end of the episode, for those interested in mechanical engineering, mechatronics, or robotics, do you have any advice when it comes to college or looking for work now that you've been doing it for a few years?
Yeah, totally. It's a good question. I don't know, like study hard, get your hands on some equipment and just like start playing around with stuff. I was kind of like mentioning my like introduction into mechanical engineering at the college. Like I didn't really have that, like I wasn't building robots from like, a young age up. I like built some like random stuff, but like nothing super impressive that I've seen other people do. But I've always thought that was like a great way to do it. There's so many like robotics clubs these days that I see a lot of people like do that, and then that's a great way to like pivot into the space or like show that you're very capable in that space. But also like don't be afraid of like the non-technical side of things. And like I'm not the most hands-on, technically savvy person of all time, and I've still been able to like work in this definitely like technically challenging space for a long time and fairly solid at it. And so there's a lot of things outside of like that hardcore engineering that I think are extremely important in the workforce and in college and in basically like daily life. So like, at least for me, having that background and like a little bit of that knowledge helps a lot, but I don't need to be the smartest person in the room to be extremely effective at what I do. So there's also like other things. So I don't know, maybe just get your foot in the door and just like perform well, and you'll get more opportunities kind of handed to you, or at least in a positive work environment for like college. That's what happens, and I've been fortunate in some of those places. Maybe unlucky in others, but just take what you can get and keep working hard.
All right, fair enough. And then the last thing, I understand you're fundraising right now. If you want to talk about that, I'll also put a link to the GoFundMe on whatever sites this is on.
Yeah, totally. I am fundraising for Ukrainian scouts in Ukraine. So trying to plus Ukrainian scouts to basically camps outside of Ukraine where they can like self-develop and develop like, I don't know, pioneering skills and writing skills and things like that. Actually, the group that we're partnering with, they do a lot of like outdoor activities like kayaking, canoeing, hiking, that sort of thing. So it's great to see like some of the money that we've already collected and donated are going towards like those sorts of camps. It looks like the kids are having a lot of fun. So yeah, I'd love to share that. And that's like in addition to my Chicago Marathon, which is something I'm very excited for, running that October 13th, 2024 this year. So I think it's 6 weeks away from today, something like that.
It's close.
Yeah. So I figured I'm running a marathon. A lot of people fundraise when they run marathons. This is a great opportunity for me to do that as well. So nice. We'll love it if anyone donated, and appreciate you bringing it up.
That's awesome. Damian Kozak, thank you for being episode 2. And hopefully sometime in the future we'll do a second episode, and maybe even in person.
Would love that. Thanks, Adrian.